You ever have one of those moments when everything you thought you knew about yourself suddenly changes because of one unexpected person? Yeah, that's my story. My name's Mia, and this is the story of how one ordinary night on an old gray couch turned into the beginning of something I never saw coming, something that tested my loyalty, my morals, and my heart in ways I never imagined possible. It started the way most stories like this do, quietly, innocently, almost forgettably. But looking back now, I realize that every glance, every laugh, every small touch was leading up to that one night that changed everything. The couch was just the beginning, but he became everything I never knew I needed. So, if you've ever found yourself torn between what's right and what feels real, keep listening, because my story isn't about betrayal. It's about awakening. It all began 2 years ago when I was in a relationship that looked perfect from the outside. Ethan, my boyfriend, was the kind of man everyone adored, charming, dependable, the kind who never forgot to text good morning. We'd been together for 5 years, and people often said we were ghouls. But what no one saw were the silences between us, the way our laughter had turned into polite smiles, or how love had turned into routine. We weren't fighting. We weren't unhappy. We were just empty. And that emptiness is dangerous because it doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you that maybe this is all you deserve, that love, once it settles, is supposed to feel like comfort, not passion. Then came Noah. Noah was Ethan's best friend from college. He'd moved back to the city after years abroad, and Ethan invited him to crash at our place for a few weeks while he looked for his own apartment. I remember the first time I saw him, standing in our doorway with that easy grin and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. There was something about him that felt alive, like he carried the chaos I'd been craving. He wasn't conventionally perfect. His hair always looked like he'd run his hands through it one too many times, and he wore sarcasm like a second skin. But his eyes, God, those eyes had this softness, like he actually saw people. The first few days were casual. He'd make coffee in the morning, hum old songs while cooking, and sometimes tease me about how overorganized the kitchen was. Ethan loved having him around. I tried to love it too. But something about Noah unsettled me in a way I couldn't explain. One night, Ethan had to stay late at work. I was home, curled up on the couch, watching some mindless show when Noah came in, holding a bowl of popcorn. "Mind if I join?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes searching mine. I nodded, pretending it didn't make my heart race. We watched in silence for a while, but silence with him wasn't awkward. It was charged. He started making sarcastic comments about the movie, and I couldn't stop laughing. Real laughter, the kind that leaves you breathless. It had been so long since I'd felt that. At one point, I turned to look at him, and he was already watching me. There was this tiny moment, barely a second, where everything felt still. My pulse was loud in my ears, and I looked away, pretending to focus on the TV. That couch became our place, not intentionally, not even consciously. But over the next few weeks, every time Ethan was out, Noah and I somehow ended up there talking, laughing, sharing pieces of ourselves that had long been hidden. He'd ask me things Ethan never did, like, "What's your biggest fear?" Or "If you could start over anywhere, where would you go?" One night he asked, "Are you happy, Mia?" I didn't know what to say. The truth was complicated. I should have been happy. I had stability, security, and someone who loved me. But with Noah, I realized happiness wasn't just about comfort. It was about feeling seen. Then came the night that changed everything. It was raining. Ethan had gone on a business trip, and the house felt too big, too quiet. I was sitting on that same couch, lost in thought, when Noah came in holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "You looked like you needed this," he said softly. We talked for hours that night, about life, regrets, love, everything. There was a moment when the storm outside thundered so loud that the lights flickered. I jumped slightly, and without thinking, he reached for my hand. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. His hand was warm, steady, and when our eyes met, there was no more pretending. The world blurred, and all I could feel was the magnetic pull between us. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to stop him, but I didn't want to. The kiss was gentle, hesitant, filled with questions neither of us dared to ask. When we finally pulled away, both of us were trembling, half from fear, half from relief. We didn't speak for a moment, then he whispered, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Don't be." That night, we didn't cross any more lines, but something had already changed. We both knew it. The couch wasn't just furniture anymore. It was a memory, a turning point. The days that followed were confusing. We tried to act normal, but the air between us was thick with tension. Every accidental brush of his arm, every shared glance, felt electric. Ethan noticed something was off. One evening he asked, "Is everything okay between us?" And I lied. I said yes, because how could I explain that for the first time in years I felt alive? But not because of him. When Noah finally found his own apartment, part of me was relieved. The other part felt like it was losing something precious. He left quietly, with just a hug and a look that said everything words couldn't. Weeks passed. Ethan and I carried on like before, but the emptiness had grown louder now, echoing in every silence, every forced smile. Then, one night, I found a note on the couch. It was from Noah. It read, "Some people come into your life to remind you what love should feel like. Don't forget that, even if it's not me." I cried that night, because he was right. I never saw Noah again after that, but he left something behind, a truth I couldn't ignore. I ended things with Ethan a month later, not because of Noah, but because I finally understood that staying out of guilt isn't love, it's fear. Years later, I ran into Noah at a cafe. Time had changed us both, but the way he smiled, that hadn't changed. We talked, laughed, reminisced. When he asked if I was happy now, I smiled and said, "I'm getting there." He nodded. "Good, you deserve that." We didn't make promises or talk about the past, but as I walked away, I realized something. Sometimes, the people who come into your life at the wrong time aren't meant to stay. They're meant to wake you up, and that's exactly what he did. The couch was just the beginning, but he became everything I never knew I needed, even if only for a moment.